Hi, friends, and welcome back. I am so happy that you're here. And this is the Play Along Journal series where here on YouTube I share two versions of a journal spread in two different handmade journals. So, this gives you a good look of how to take inspiration that's on the page and run in two different directions. So I'm starting out here. I have some scribbles on the page and I'm just adding in some gesso with a dry paintbrush. And the reason I like it dry is I feel like you can kind of rub it into the paper more when it's gesso. It's not super liquidy, and when you kind of scrub it in this way, you don't really get those brush strokes. I just like the look of it. So play around with whether you want to have a wet brush or if you want to dip it in water or things like that. So I'm thinking on this page it would be fun to use one of my collage sewn tags here that I already have pre-made. And since this page doesn't have a pocket, I'm trying to think of fun ways to attach it onto the page. While I have you here, I want to tell you about my free offer that I have. It's my Fringe Flipbook course. And if you love this series, I think you'll really love that as well. I teach you how to make a little flipbook that is full of texture and different interactive elements. So the link for that is down in the description below, so make sure to go check that out. Also in the description, I try to link the supplies that I'm using in case you're curious and you want to look for those for yourself. So I'm just creating a little strip here and I'm going to make it kind of like a slide pocket. I really like this pattern paper. It's actually wrapping paper that I had saved from a present, and it's super thin. So I'm backing it in a piece of cardstock just to give it some substance. I'm going to do a little test just to make sure that that doesn't stick too far off the edge. I want to add in a few different collage elements, and this is kind of some collage paper that is pre-printed, and I'm going to use my glue stick to glue that down. Just giving that a good rub with my fingers to make sure that that is securely on the page. Use your scissors or tear that off the sides. Either way, I don't mind the look of it being a little bit imperfect. Collage tissue can be really fun because it takes on the color that's behind it, as you can see. So it almost looks like I printed on top there to get that black wording on there. You can also use deli paper. I like to use deli paper a lot of times. It's the translucent paper, and you can create your own patterns and things like that and kind of have it pre-made if you want, and then use it for collage purposes. I want to add a little drawing onto this, and so sometimes it's a little daunting to draw directly in your journal. At least it is for me. It's not really something that I feel super natural at. And so it may be beneficial for you to try to do it on another piece of paper first and then put that paper into your journal. I did that with a black Stabilo and then came in with a few little scribble marks with a pencil. I'm going to add just a little bit, looks like there's a little bit too much water on my brush, but just kind of smudge out that pigment that was in the Stabilo all. And I just like the kind of like painterly look that it gives it. It's I don't know, it makes it look less perfect, I think, and I like the look of that. Now that I have that the way I like, I'm going to hit that with the heat gun just a little bit so that the pigment doesn't get all over the place. And then I'm going to fussy cut around the sides. So I'm just doing this kind of quickly and trying to leave an even amount of spacing around the edges of the drawing. But you definitely don't have to be too perfect with this. I just like the look that it gives with it being cut out on the page. I think it stands out sometimes a little bit more than if I just would have glued down the page as it was. The key, I think, for this is to have a really sharp pair of scissors. I love these Tim Holtz scissors because of the serrated edges. They're definitely my go-to, and I like the big handle on them too. My fingers don't get fatigued from cutting things out. So if you like to do things like this, I definitely suggest a really sharp pair of scissors. Just touching up a few little spots there before I go ahead and put it on the page. And deciding what else is needed on this spread. I think it needs something else on that side besides just doing the botanical. And I think it'd be a fun place to add in some text and script type writing. So the way that I like to do this is I am writing actual words. They don't need to mean anything, or you can use it as a great space to do a little brain dump journaling there. But really, I just make my letters kind of closer together. I don't use spaces and make it a little bit more scribbly scrawly than maybe my normal handwriting would be. And then in the background, it just looks more like a pattern or a stamp that you put down. The intention, at least for me, is not to have something that's actually going to be read. I would definitely letter it in a different way if that was my intention. Adding in a little bit more white gesso on top, just because I don't want the text to look like it was just placed on top. I really want to integrate it into the background there. Bringing in a little bit of that collage paper, I think, over to the left side, just like I did on the right side. And I think I decided here that it didn't really need it. The handwriting was enough to give it some interest. And the back side of that tag already had some stuff going on, so I'm going to leave it like that. And it's a pretty simple spread, but I really like all the elements that came together. Gonna get started now on this teal version, and this that I'm cutting out is a little, it's actually a piece of cereal box that I had then used as a paint palette, and then I had just done some white mark making on top of it, and I think it could look really fun on this page. And so I'm gonna create a fold out or a flap of sorts, and the way I'm gonna do that is with tape. I really like this artist tape from Blick, and I have a couple different widths of it, and I have it in black and white, and it's just a really good strong tape. But if you're wanting to use it for paintings and stuff like that to do a white border, it also comes off pretty well if you need it to. You'll probably see around, there's a fly buzzing around on the screen, so just ignore that. But I'm using this binding tape from Wow Studios to just give it a little bit of decor on that edge, and that tape is super strong, so I know that that will help to hold everything in place. I added on a fun little mini paper clip that I had pre-done. I like to use little baby fabric scraps that I would probably just throw away and sew them onto paper clips to create a really fun embellishment. I wanted a really quick and easy spread, so I'm using my Stabilo Woodies to get some pigment onto the page. The great thing about these is they're really quite creamy, and you can put them onto the page and then with water kind of mix those pigments and those colors together. I really like the flap, and so I don't want to take away from that by doing anything too busy on the rest of the page. Now with my finger, I'm adding in some white gesso to kind of blur in those edges. And just to add some interest. I really like how it can kind of ebb and flow and integrate into the background a little bit. My finger is one of my favorite ways to, I think, put on gesso, just because you can really kind of rub it in and then manipulate it to how you want it to go. And I feel like it looks really natural with trying to blend it a little bit into the background. I'm taking just a color pencil, adding a little bit more color and coming back in with my Stabilo Woody as well. Playing around with how much color I want on the page and also making sure that I'm adding color back on top of the white gesso as well, instead of just leaving it untouched. So now you can see that color kind of comes from underneath, but also is on top too. So everything just kind of integrates and flows a lot better, I think. I'm going to add just a little bit of paint onto the page as well. And I'm mixing two colors here to get a color that I want. I just need a little bit, so I'm just mixing a little bit of color. And I've loved adding neons in with my colors lately because I think it just adds a really fun pop. And I'm adding some onto the flap as well so that everything looks like it goes together. And it's kind of fun to apply paint with your palette knife because you get kind of inconsistent looks. You can press harder or move your palette knife side to side or up and down. You can kind of also apply it with the flat edge or the side edge if you want to get some marks in it. Last but not least, I really like the white marks that are on the flap itself. And so I'm going to add some of those onto the spread as well and just create nice flow and energy throughout the page. I think this page is a great example of you don't need a really specific focal point for your spread. Yes, the flap is interesting, but I wouldn't consider it like a focal point. A lot of times for that, I consider like a quote or a drawing, something like that. So I think this is a great one to look at for keeping things just really simple and clean and creating good energy and flow. I hope that you guys love today's spreads that I showed and that you'll keep watching, and I'll see you next week. Have a good one.